Hello, my name is Adam Hosmeyer. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. When we were in Eureka Springs for vacation, we got the chance to go over to what's called the Cosmic Cave. And it's halfway in between Eureka Springs and Branson. My family have never been to a cave before. I've been to Carlsbad Caverns, and I was kind of expecting something like that. But when we went to the Cosmic Cave, it was obviously completely different. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about our tour guide. I'll put his picture right here. Super cool guy. During the tour, he said he'd been there since 1973, which is about 46 or 47 years, which is pretty impressive.
Right? Okay, since this cave was found in 1845, in fact last month was our 175th anniversary of the founding of the cave, most of the damage was from onyx miners. Onyx they used to sell in Eureka Springs to make gear shift knobs for the old Model A Ford cars. And they had hired all the half-crazed local teenagers to come in here and take the rock over and sell it at 8 cents a pound. Now that rock right there weighs 24 pounds. That's a $2 bill, and a $2 bill 100 years ago, that's twice the average wage for a person, out working. And so if that stalactite that was there was probably a 6 foot long, 1,000 pound chunk of rock, there'd probably been 4 or 5 weeks labor. But they used a mule team and tied the cable around the mule, drug it around down here, driving around the rock, drug it over to the entrance, made a winch and pulley and lifted it out into a wagon, took it to Urbanet 3 miles away where the train was. The train took it to Eureka, and right behind the Eureka Springs train depot is an old burned out building that's still there, and that's where the carvers are at. So what took me 30 seconds to tell you probably took them guys 4 days and 6 double hernia operations later. So this was not easy, and so the caves closer to Eureka were annihilated, but this cave, except for this area through here, was the only real damaged area they did. So the cave was protected. Now, this is the old cave. You'll see the new cave. I found that back portion of the cave back in '93. I was the first one to ever leave footprints, first one to ever shine a light back there. You're going to get to see a chunk of it. And we do wild tours back there that last 2.5 hours. That's after hours. And so you'll see the difference. It'll be like the difference in Miami, Florida, and Anchorage, Alaska. Totally different. So the old cave, this old part up here is, been known about for quite some time. We had a lot of weird neighbors. We used to have a guy that was a potter. He used to own the cave. And if you haven't noticed all the weird looking stuff on the handrails and posts, that's not pottery, but it was done by a potter. And the clay down here, we reach over here in just a second, that clay is just exactly the texture of peanut butter. Try not to get any on you. Boy, you can get a whole bunch of get a class of 5th graders down here and they see that. In 10 minutes they're all wearing more paint. It's all over the guy. It spreads fast. But the clay does make good pottery. This is latex paint, linseed oil, and a ceramic coating he put on there back almost 70 years ago. He was our first interior decorator, obviously on a lot of medication at the time. I can tell by looking at his work, he was heavily medicated. Self-medicated. Yeah, probably the mushrooms that grow in caves make you kind of medicate for a while, or meditate or something. But this, now, y'all ever watch these old movies that had like Jesse James and they were all in a cave and they had all the torches going and they're plotting the next train robbery and all those torches don't have any smoke in the movies. These suckers, these are pine knot. They used to use these. About 60% of that is smoke that comes out of it, and that's got a sap in there that'll burn for a while. And so it makes it real hard to breathe, real hard, hard to see the guy next to you. Where'd you go, George? And he catches him on fire. Right? Just a big old ball of flame. That was where a lot of the smoke came from on the walls. And it kind of looks like Elmer's glue running down the wall, and that's where the water's washed off the soot. And that's been in the last 100 years. So when I came here in 1973, all it was right there was just a little bead of water, and it has now grown at the blazing speed of 1/2 inch in 47 years. Most boring thing you can spend 4.5 decades to do is watch a rock grow. I have seen soda straws, little hollow stalactites like these, grow as fast as 3 inches in 4 months, and the one next to it might take 1 inch in 100 years. You cannot tell people, especially with all the school kids we have, can't tell people how old this stuff is, unless you sit down here and watch it and you can kind of accumulate for the smoke. So I just tell everybody the cave's older than dirt, leave it at that. Yep, dirt's up there and we're under it. The human mind can't grasp how long it took for all this to erode out, let alone for all the water to start dripping in here and decorating it. So I will tell you the concrete we poured down here back in the 70s has never yet dried. Nothing dries in here. You mold or you rust, but you ain't ever going to dry. WD-40, but it's the moisture is very. And we used to have a lot of bats. And grab this section. We found out there were some guys, some neighbors, that would come down back in the 1930s. They brought tires to smoke the bats out. They'd sit out here put a little kerosene on there and set that tire on fire and roll four or five of them down here and wait a little bit. And by the time the bats come flying out, they had already ingested so much of their favorite beverage that they probably didn't see them. I talked to this firsthand with people that down here. Oh yeah, we brought our booze back, you know, in the entrance and waiting for the bats to fly out, and had their 10-gauge shotgun, and the bats were safe. They didn't injure any of them. Just injured a lot of tires. We took most of the tires out. We have some in our display history room up there. Kept one down here, and they still had a lot of tread on them. So I don't know why they wasted it like that. I had to take my own tires. But basically, since the cave had been known about for so long, 1927 is when they built the stairs. Since 1927, off and on, it's been open. But I have added on, and now we're exploring right there. You'll see a hole with a light in it. We had a flood back in 2011. The water got about 7 or 8 feet above your head. It stayed there for about a week before it started going down. That was a major flood. And as the water got 5 feet lower than where you're standing, from right about here, that whole wall started shaking. And you can literally stand here and feel your toes vibrate. And of all the years and everything I've done here, that's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, is come in here and feel that wall shaking. So when I got outside, looked around, couldn't find anywhere the water could have been coming from. And so we started digging, and the way we started digging, there's a little hole over here on the side. It was about the size of this one over here. We could hear the water running back there. And I didn't even use dynamite. I just put tin blasting caps and wrapped some duct tape around it, packed it in there and popped it, and it cracked open the rock big enough I could see an open passage. And I thought, lo and behold, there's a passageway right there. We've been a half mile back in the cave looking for more cave, and 80 feet in the entrance, there's an unexplored passageway right under our nose. But it's been full of clay, so we're like the roller-rooter guy, and we're digging the clay out. And if you see back there, we have now got 36 feet back. We think only within 10 or 12 feet further before we hit the vertical passage, because I'll show you downstairs why I think that. So we are going to get back on this right after Thanksgiving. We'll have a 3-week segment there. We're closed, and I got some guys that come over here from Tulsa, University of Arkansas. We had a big dig back in late February, and they got back there without buckets. We're using these 5-gallon buckets. They got a bright idea of bringing an 8-foot by 8-foot tarp, and these are big guys. They put the tarp down, they put all the clay on the tarp, and they dragged the tarp over here, and had a little gal right here at the end of it with the clay and the buckets. And then we had 2 big guys carrying the clay over there and dumping it out. So we had a real good system for about 6 hours, and then they all got tired and wanted to go home. So we made some progress, so we are still digging into that, and we'll be back on it this winter, pretty here about another month and a half. So we're coming.
You could tell he was like super excited about the cave. He actually owns the cave, or the property where the cave is. Can you own a cave? I don't know, whatever. But he owns the tour guide, and he runs the shop there. And he was super excited to tell all the stories. You could tell by the excitement in his voice that he was super excited to tell the story of the cave to everybody who visited there. You could also tell that he was like super excited about the exploration part of the cave. Like he would say, like he found a hole. And he talked about a hole for like 10 minutes during the tour that he found while he was doing some exploration. So part of it was he's super proud of the cave and proud of the work that he's done. But also he obviously loves to explore, and he keeps going further and further and further back into the cave.
That's north, that's north. That was north. So another thing, real obvious right here. You look at that crack in the ceiling right above your head, that runs 30 miles in each direction. You're standing under a 60-mile-long major inactive fault line. That's kind of happened on the door. Okay, now, where y'all see it drops off right here about 60 feet, it starts going deeper. And way back where that back light is, on the left wall, I had some divers over here from Memphis that were actual cave divers and knew their stuff. They were mapping the cave. They got down into a passageway about 25 feet down and found a room about half the size of this area. And when they got out, they said, Randy, there's 18-inch long stalactites, just like those, hanging in that sunken room. And I said, wait a minute, if you're 80 feet underwater, you're not going to find stalactites. There's something going on down there that happened that we don't know about. So what we figured, when we get back in this next chamber, you're going to see some massive pieces of ceiling, bigger than that boat. And the ceiling chunks have fallen in an angle, and it's pointing toward that hole they found, so we think something thousands of years ago caused that part of the...
Bruh. Yeah, keep going.
Is there a memory so like that up there?
Been here in 1911. Oh, that's cool. Over 100 years they've been underwater. Okay, I'm not an expert, but I would say the reason those boats sank is the hole in that one on. One goes, they all go. Well, what they did is they constructed 4 barrels of a pontoon boat, tied them together with oak poles, and probably left them back here and floated around randomly after the flood, and it's sank right there. Now, it stays underwater all the time, so they don't really rot. They just kind of had a lot of weird things happen back here. I've heard noises back here when I'm by myself, and I'm but the thing is, when you have air coming through that little hole up there, it's strong enough to blow out a big lighter. And you can hear water back there roaring away. It kind of sounds like if the ghost had gas, it has that kind of moaning sound to it. You know, you hear that and you feel the air and you know something's there. So we try to dig out behind the coffin. That old peanut butter clay was in the way in. We got back there and started setting off a few charges. Now, dynamite doesn't blow up, it blows down or the least resistance. Now, I've done quite a bit of that in caves. We have a 3-inch crack that's the same as that one back in the little hole to your right. And I put just a little bit of newspaper, wet newspaper, crammed it in there and popped it. And there's a passageway 2.5 by 2 foot back there. We crawled into about 25 feet. You got 3 inches tall again, 2 more quarter-stick charges. And within 6 days, I had TV crews here from Little Rock and Springfield, Missouri. This made national news. So this was, in fact, it said in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette newspaper, was one of the biggest discoveries in Arkansas in 30 years. So you'll see what I mean when we get back in there. But we're leaving the old cave, we're going into the new cave, and you're going to start seeing a lot of weird formations that we don't see in the old cave. There's, for one thing, helictites. They grow crooked, look like cheese curls and chow mein noodles. There's some small ones here, we'll see big ones in the other room. And the water is not really, it drips to make stalactites, but it drips, but it kind of evaporates before it drips to make the helictites, and they curl and turn, defy gravity. I have one wall that we found just further back in the cave that we call the explosion in a mattress factory. It looked like bed springs, just 16 inches long, spiral out of the walls. And they just get confused, I guess. It's dark, they didn't know which way to go. So, but we dug this out back in 1994. We started giving wild tours, that's the off-trail tour to begin with, and then in 94 we got it where we could bring the old ladies and the babies and everybody in between back there. But the other part, which I'll show you, that's the wild tour. We offered that 3 nights a week. And that's about 2.5 hour trip. And you got to have upper and lower body strength because you got to climb walls. No crawling, just climbing walls. Climbing walls is basically crawling vertically, right? So, using the same elbows and toes.
Jeez.
There's some crazy stuff going on back here. I don't know if y'all know
going.
it's actually warmed up 2 degrees. And it's not in global warming. Nothing down here changes. Yeah, we're gonna kind of make sure everybody gets out that low spot there. Got a neighbor at a chiropractor, he gives all the customers 20% off. If you're hunkered down a little too long, he'll pop you right back in place.
Let us know if we need to keep moving up and getting him out of that.
Yeah, I think you're good. Yeah, we get everybody in through. Yeah, we got in here. We noticed all these crazy formations that are all over the place that have curled and turned, and that's the helictites again, the water evaporation. Here's one up here that did a swivel. The one that bothers me is the one that looks like a white mouse hanging by its tail over here.
Yeah.
That has always bothered my the fear of gravity.
Yeah.
That's the forget Isaac Newton. So there's a lot of stuff in here that if that crack or that fault line had shifted or moved any little bit, there would be a lot of formations collapsed. And so we're not in an area that's prone to have an earthquake situation. And actually it'd be down here.
And he said in 1993 that he discovered this new part of the cave. I don't think we got to go all the way back. No, we got to go quite a ways back there. He showed us one really cool feature. He didn't really let us get too close, but he did show it to us. We were able to take pictures. Anyway, this is kind of a long video. I just want to show you what we saw along the way of the tour, and maybe you can see some of the cool sights that were down there when we were taking the tour. Like I say, I've been to Carlsbad Caverns, and you go through that tour. The path is really wide. You just kind of stroll down there on your own leisure. This one was super narrow paths up and down. The floor is kind of wet. I was always afraid I was going to slip fall, but we made it out, and it was really neat. And if you're ever over Cosmic Cave, it's definitely worth going by to take a look at it. Some really cool features of the cave, and the people there are super nice, and the tour guy is super hyped about his cave, and he has a right to be. It's really cool. He's built it into a really cool spectator thing. So if you ever get there, Eureka Springs, go to Cosmic Cave. It is pretty cool. Thanks for watching.